me? Yes, I'm sorry. It is Monday, but we'll endeavor to get through it together. There's so much happening, and I gotta begin with the economy. I know on Friday we spent time with the economic news. They were expecting 1 million jobs created, and it looks like there were only 200,000 jobs created. I've been thinking, sometimes that's a dangerous thing. I've been thinking, what if this is all part of the Biden plan? What if this isn't a byproduct of COVID at this point? What if they are never letting a crisis go to waste? What if they are wanting to fundamentally transform America, taking advantage of the situation? Now, bear with me here. It is an obvious byproduct of the Biden administration policies. Well, actually, I shouldn't even say a byproduct. It is an actual fact. The Biden administration wants to raise energy prices in the country to discourage people from buying gas. So, for example, walking back, drilling on federal land, getting rid of the Keystone XL pipeline, even telling the Saudis they had to stop their incursions with the Houthi or rebels in Yemen. All of these things were designed to destabilize energy markets and drive up the cost of gas, because in supply and demand, if the cost goes up, you will have less demand. You will stop using it. It will be good for the environment. Raising the cost of energy is good for the environment, and they want it. What else do the Democrats want? They don't just want gas prices to be higher. They also want wages to be higher. They've been flirting with a federal minimum wage increase to $15 an hour, but they can't get it because they can't pass it with reconciliation in the Senate. They tried, and the Senate parliamentarians said, nope, can't do it. So they've continued to extend the unemployment benefit. Not only have they extended the unemployment benefit, but unlike days of old, you now don't even have to show evidence that you're applying for a job. You just have to say you're out of work. And the presumption is you being out of work, well, it's COVID. So you being out of work because of COVID, you get a federal benefit in addition to your state level benefit. And that federal benefit and that state benefit gives you as much money or more than you're making on minimum wage in this country. And the odds are it actually is more. And Joe Biden says that the unemployment benefit is not discouraging work.
President, do you believe enhanced unemployment benefits had any effect on diminishing a return to work in some categories?
No, nothing measurable.
Nothing measurable, except that's not the evidence on the ground. There's a restaurant near me where I live, and I went in Friday to pick up something for my wife, and they had a sign on the counter when you went in the check-in counter that said, please be patient. COVID unemployment benefits are making all restaurants short-staffed. A friend of mine sent me a picture from his neighborhood where there was a coffee shop that had up a similar sign. And this is the story around the country, that no one wants to work. Uber and Lyft are signaling they have driver shortages because people are getting unemployment. There's no reason for them to be out driving Uber and Lyft. And originally what the left was saying was that, no, this isn't true. There's no connection. And now what they're saying is, well, maybe these employers should pay more. And it got me thinking, what if this is all part of their plan? What if it's part of a plan? You pay people unemployment. By the way, the Democrats are already saying, well, given the unemployment numbers, we may need to extend this even beyond September. What if this is part of the plan? You keep people unemployed, so you force businesses to have to raise their wages to such a level that it is attractive. You'll make more by going to work than staying home. Now, progressives would tell you that's a good thing. But they're, of course, economically ignorant when it comes to this stuff. There are a lot of people who will just sit on their backsides. They're like, I'm not getting evicted. Can't get evicted in COVID. I don't even have to pay rent. There are a lot of people who will say, well, I'm making ends meet and I'm staying home. I'm not working. I got time to relax. There's no need to work. I'll just keep taking it. And so they're not going back. I know a guy in the metro Atlanta area, owns a number of restaurants, is now paying $20 an hour plus benefits plus vacation, and is still short-staffed. This restaurant I went to on Friday night is paying $15 an hour. The intended federal minimum wage of the left had their way, still can't get people to come work. So you've got restaurants, Chick-fil-A is paying $15 an hour and having labor shortages, and they get Sundays off. So people are already paying what the left would like the wage rate to be, and they still can't hire people. So let's say they keep raising their rates. Let's say they go to $30 an hour. So you're making, let me just pull out my handy dandy calculator here. You're making $30 an hour. You're working $8 and you're working 8 hours a day. That's $240 a day. Times 5, that's $1,200 a week, times, let's just say you do 40, that's $48,000 in a 40-week work year. Okay, so the left says, well, that's good. So what happens, though? What happens? It winds up not being good. Why does it wind up not being good? Well, there's this thing called a profit, and that is the money that is left over after all the revenue is then expended on all the costs. So money comes into a business, money flows out of a business to all the expenses, and whatever's left over is the profit. The owners of businesses run their business not just because it's a labor of love, but they also make some money at it. Well, to continue making their profit, they're going to have to raise prices. So now they've raised wages, and they have to pass that cost on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Now, the left will think, well, that's okay because the consumers are now getting paid more to come back to work, except that's not really the case. Who are the consumers who are buying? The consumers who are buying aren't the wait staff. It's not the servers. It's the people who have already gone back to work. And guess what? Those people's salaries aren't rising. It's the people who've been sitting on unemployment whose wages will rise, they hope, but the other people's wages aren't. So now those people can't go eat at the restaurant because the restaurant's gotten too expensive, because the restaurant has to raise its prices in order to keep people employed. So now the restaurant, to attract people to come back to work, has priced itself out of the marketplace and has to go out of business. And now the people who came back, who were making the exorbitant wages, they now have no job and they have to go back on unemployment. And it's a cycle. See, this is the part the left does not understand. And this is the part you need to understand. There are people who have gone back to work, people in good jobs who have gone back to work, or independent contractors who never got unemployment and they're out hustling. And they're making money, but their money is not going to increase because they are not the people who must be induced to come back to work. It's the people on unemployment who have to be induced to come back to work in the retail and the restaurant, the hospitality industries. That's then going to cause prices to go up as the employers, in order to be able to still make a living themselves, have to raise wages. And then it's all the people who are making the produce along the way in the packing industry, the poultry industry, everything. Their prices are going to go up. But it's the person who's working in the law firm or the bank, the person who's managing the grocery store, the person who's working for the Fortune 500 company, the person who's working for the power company, or the person who's working for the government, whose wages are not going up commensurately with everyone else's wages, who are now having to have their wages come up to get them out off unemployment. And those people, the people who aren't unemployed, the people who didn't lose their paycheck, their wages aren't going up, so now they can't buy stuff. And there's inflation, and prices continue to go up. Energy prices are going up, restaurant prices are going up, consumer prices are going up. Eventually, then what happens? Interest rates have to go up to stop the inflation. When the interest rates go up to stop inflation, the federal debt payment is altered because we're only paying interest on the national debt. We're not really paying down the national debt. We're paying interest on the national debt, and we can do that because of low interest rates. When the interest rates go up, the payments we make to service the debt's interest go up. That means there's less discretionary money in the federal budget, which means taxes have to go up on the very people whose wages have not gone up. It causes a cascading effect. And don't look now. Don't look now. Corn is the latest commodity to soar, according to the Wall Street Journal. Prices have risen 50% in 2021. A bushel costs more than twice what it did a year ago. America's biggest cash crop has rarely been more expensive. Corn prices have risen 50% in 2021. A bushel costs more than twice what it did a year ago. With corn climbing towards a record, Americans can expect to pay more for all sorts of items at the grocery store as well as at the gas pump. Corn is a key ingredient in making products ranging from tortilla chips and chicken wings to bourbon and Coca-Cola. About 40% of the U.S. crop is blended into motor fuel. Analysts say high corn prices are lifting makers of fertilizer and farm equipment while helping consumer products and food companies justify their own price increases. U.S. farmers who are seeding fields for a big autumn harvest are also benefiting. So fuel is already going up because of the Keystone XL pipeline, the drilling ban, the instability in the Middle East. Now it's going to go up because of the corn prices. Your Coke price is going to go up. Your bourbon price is going to go up. Your chicken wing price is going to go up. Your beef price is going to go up if they eat grain. All of this is the fallout from the continued COVID stimulus and the continued COVID unemployment package. And you know, here's an irony here. They're hurting Main Street. And the Democrats don't care. See, Main Street can't afford to pay what an Amazon or a Walmart can pay. Main Street can't afford to pay what a Fortune 500 company can pay. You got all these little socialists out there, these little would-be authoritarians themselves who hate Trump, who've been telling us that you got to raise wages. The problem is you do that, it hurts Main Street. And their response is, well, if they can't pay a living wage, they should be out of business anyway. Except their idea of a living wage is they live in New York or Washington or Chicago or LA or Portland and San Francisco. The cost of living around the country is different from those places. Not everyone needs $15 an hour. And even at $15 an hour, people are having a hard time hiring people. This sparks not just an economic crisis, but what about the new black business owners? What about the non-white business owners? They're coming into the market. They're coming into Main Street. They're beginning to make money. And it's the Biden economic policies that are going to crush them. And they're denying it. That's going to have long-term repercussions in the politics of this country. And, you know, ironically, the Democratic policies that are going to wreck the economy that are so easily foreseeable right now could be what brings Donald Trump back into power and will certainly be what brings the Republicans into control of Congress next year. It's one reason you're seeing this coordinated effort by the media to go after Fox News and the Republicans and claim that the Republicans can't get over their quote-unquote big lie and this Liz Cheney stuff is they're trying to do a coordinated media effort with the Democrats to damage the Republican brand as much as possible to try to forestall them coming back in 2022. It's all a coordinated effort, and I have no doubt at this point that keeping the unemployment benefit as high as it is right now is a coordinated effort by the left to force employers to raise wages. And what's going to happen is when they do, it's going to spark a chain of easily foreseeable events to people who understand basic economics, and it's going to be bad. Joe Biden, however, says that the unemployment benefit isn't keeping people off the line. I got to play you this audio. This is CNN's, I think it's Catherine Rampell. Listen to why she says people aren't going back to work.
We don't know exactly. Certainly the numbers were much lower than had been expected. The industry that did the best happens to be the one that had been complaining the most about being unable to find workers, that is accommodation and food services. We don't know, of course, how that industry hiring patterns might have looked, in the absence of more generous unemployment benefits or other kinds of factors. We don't know what the counterfactual is, right? But it's puzzling. I think there are a number of reasons to be concerned about labor supply being suppressed in some way, workers wanting jobs but still being hesitant to take the jobs on offer. Some of that might have to do with, of course, with the fact that they are getting more generous unemployment benefits. But there are a lot of other factors too, including lack of access to childcare, public transit cutbacks, the risk of getting sick at work, the risk of, frankly, getting assaulted at work if you tell a customer to wear a mask, etc. So there are a lot of complex things going on here, and employers are certainly saying that they're having trouble finding workers, and yet there are millions of workers out there who say, hey, I'm trying to find a job, but I can't find one that will have me that also happens to suit my needs.
They're not going back to work because they might get assaulted for telling someone to put a mask on. This is a CNN economics, expert commentator. That's what she thinks is keeping unemployment high, is people don't want to go to work and get yelled at for making people wear a mask. This counts as Is it any wonder CNN's ratings are doing what they're doing right now?
Want to be on the show? Call Eric now at 877-
I sure hope everybody had a great Mother's Day weekend. I grilled out. I made white barbecue chicken. I realize I got to do better with the recipes. I keep telling you guys I'm going to get them, and then I forget to do them. I'm going to have to crack the whip on Philip and make him stand over me and put the recipes in. But I made white barbecue chicken. It was quite delicious. I've got a white barbecue chicken recipe with white barbecue chicken sauce. And one of the essential ingredient is no longer made, and it took me a while to try to figure out what to do to duplicate it. I figured it out, and it turned out great. Now, with grilling out there, the summer season beginning, Memorial Day coming up at the end of this month, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to have friends over. You're going to not wear your masks. You're going to be in your backyard. You're going to be hanging out. You're going to grill, and you can do it with Omaha Steaks. In fact, if you go to omahasteaks.com and you put Georgia in the search bar, you can order the Let's Go Grill package today. Not only are you going to get great savings, you're going to get the tasty bonus of 12 ultra juicy Omaha steak burgers free. That's almost 4 pounds of free burgers. And to top it off, you'll get $20 off first order. The Let's Go Grill package that includes 4 butcher cut fillets, 4 boneless pork chops, a pound of chicken breast, 4 kielbasa sausages, and so much more. Warmer days are here. Memorial Day is coming up. It's a perfect time, whether you're going to the beach or at home. Get your Omaha Steaks. You never know with the food shortages these days. Go on and get your Omaha Steaks in. So for Memorial Day, you will have it. Go to omahasteaks.com. Put Georgia in the search bar. You'll get 12 free burgers and $20 to check out on your first order. omahasteaks.com. Georgia in the search bar. It will be delicious, and it'll give you a great Memorial Day. I need to do a public service announcement. This actually isn't a joke. If your car is running low on gas and you're listening to my voice right now, you need to go fill up. There's been a hacker cyber attack on the major Colonial pipeline that is crucial to moving fuel around the eastern seaboard. The Biden administration said in a statement that it has issued an emergency declaration addressing the conditions creating a need for immediate transportation of gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and other refined petroleum products and provide necessary relief. The declaration covers Alabama, Arkansas, District of Columbia, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. Colonial Pipeline is crucial to fuel supplies in the U.S., stretching more than 5,500 miles and transporting as many as 2.5 million barrels of fuel per day to large U.S. market. Its capacity is said to count for almost half the East Coast fuel supplies, but the Georgia-based company had to take its IT system offline and shut down operations on Friday last week after it was targeted by a ransomware attack. Cybersecurity experts are investigating the attack. Law enforcement has been alerted. Ransomware attacks typically involve a hacker taking control of a computer system and installing software that requires the user to pay a fee. This is upsetting the East Coast fuel supply, even in the metro Atlanta area where they said things wouldn't be affected. They are starting to see gas stations running out of gas. So go fill up your car, please, if you need it. Don't wait. You may not have any gas when you get there if you wait. Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I guess it always helps if I actually get into the call screening program and see if anyone's calling. All right. I have spent an inordinate amount of time in the last few weeks talking about critical theory. I think I have reached the point where I don't need to explain it to you again. Before I get there, this is a tangential topic from Olivia Nuzzi in New York Magazine. At Wilmington Country Club recently, after playing his first round of golf as president, Joe Biden engaged in another cherished pastime. He made a gaffe. Speaking to reporters, Biden used the term crisis to refer to the state of the U.S.-Mexico border, where historic numbers of desperate migrants have arrived, urged in some cases by smugglers who promise that the new president is unlike the old one and that this one will let them in. We're going to increase the numbers, Biden said. The problem was that the refugee part was working on the crisis that ended up on the border with young people, and we couldn't do two things at once. That was a casual and not entirely articulate break with months of linguistic contortions by his administration, whose officials have insisted the word crisis does not apply to the border. We've been calling it challenging, and it is, Press Secretary Jen Psaki told me. The issue, can we call it an issue? The White House probably prefers subject, has provided a glimpse into the messaging machinations surrounding the president and the unusual degree to which his staff seeks to control the narrative and often succeeds by controlling the press and the president himself. It has also emphasized how a highly particular and rigid approach to language is a form of governing itself, just as a careful and inflammatory one was under Donald Trump. Let me read that last sentence to you again. It has also emphasized how a highly particular and rigid approach to language is a form of governing. At a certain point, the White House's strict jargon rules had the Streisand effect. The insistence that the border wasn't a crisis led to more talk of a crisis. Few fair critics would have blamed Biden in the early months of the administration for a problem that has stumped presidents of both parties, but bossing people around over words come down from a few people in his inner circle, and the officials who implement them are often left with no way to alter their approach when something doesn't work. It's a clique and secretive environment, a social club of sorts for people who have been in D.C. for decades. Biden remains a stranger even to some senior members of the White House staff, someone they not only may not be frank with, but may barely know at all. Word choice control. Word choice. Word choice is something we've got to acknowledge has a powerful impact on the way we think about things. Word choice. Critical theorists, I've told you repeatedly, believe that in order to change reality, you change words. You don't just change what words you're using from crisis to challenge. You change the definition of words themselves. You can change the definition of up from that which heads towards the heavens to that which crashes to the earth. And suddenly up means down. If you control the language, you control reality. That is the key to understanding critical theory. Kevin Roberts, writing in the D.C. Examiner. I spent many years in the classroom with a room full of students looking to me for knowledge, instruction, and guidance. I can't imagine looking back into their eyes and telling them that they're irredeemably bad, that their nation is built on a lie, and that some of them are worth more than others depending on the color of their skin. Yet if I were a public school teacher today, that's exactly what a new rule issued by the Biden administration would force me to do. The proposed rule enshrines critical race theory in the nation's K through 12 curriculum for history and civics. New guidelines will promote, quote, racially, ethnically, culturally, and linguistically responsive teaching and learning practices designed to incorporate anti-racism. The rule cites and praises radical scholar Ibram Kendi and the New York Times debunked 1619 Project. Neither are worthy of the praise. Kendi claimed in his book How to Be an Anti-Racist, quote, direct quote, the only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. That's Ibram Kendi, the voice of the left on this. The Biden administration wants to implement the 1619 Project's theories on America and also wants to implement critical race theory in schools. Now, there's polling out. School days, why Democrats are vulnerable on education. Josh Krashauer, one of the most interesting thinkers out there in politics right now. Culture wars has become a shorthand term for a series of issues that drive passionate debate but have little day-to-day relevance on the lives of Americans. On the right, when a half dozen Dr. Seuss books were taken out of print, it fueled several days of outraged programming on Fox News and talk radio. On the left, the overheated rhetoric about election administration changes in Georgia fueled a wave of progressive fury to the point Major League Baseball pulled its All-Star game out of Atlanta. These issues still matter politically, but the gap between the actual effect of these decisions and the degree of grievance felt is dramatic. But another front of the culture war doesn't neatly fit the mold. The increasingly heated debates over education, ranging from the slow pace of school openings to curriculum changes to the elimination or rollback of gifted and talented programs for top students, are now galvanizing political issues at the local level and becoming relevant nationally as well. And unlike the evanescent nature of made-for-cable TV policy fights, the disruptive changes driven by left-wing activists directly affect every parent with school-age children. Republicans were slow to appreciate the political potency of these issues, but it's now a central part of party messaging. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, typically not an aggressive culture warrior, sent a letter to Education Secretary Miguel Cardona decrying some of the most controversial curricular changes across the country, specifically targeting proposed federal grants for public schools to teach the 1619 Project curriculum published by the New York Times. Americans do not need or want their taxpayer dollars diverted from promoting the principles that unite our nation towards promoting radical ideologies meant to divide, as McConnell wrote. Americans never decided our children should be taught that our country is inherently evil. And by the way, there's a large amount of polling out there, if we trust polling. There's a large amount that shows the 1619 Project and critical theory in schools is deeply, deeply unpopular. Asked about specific examples of controversial curriculum measures, the opposition grows deeper. Over 2/3 of respondents oppose teaching students that America remains structurally racist today, 58% expressing strong opposition to this pedagogy. Changing history classes to focus on race and power and promote social justice was rejected by 59% of respondents. 50% oppose it strongly. A whopping 75% of adults surveyed said teachers should not teach students that there is no such thing as biological sex, only gender preference. Only 37% of respondents said schools should hire diversity, equity, and inclusion consultants or ministers to train teachers. 51% oppose it. You know, where I live in Georgia, two of the more Republican counties have liberal school administrations. Forsyth County and Cherokee County, they're north of the Atlanta area. They are Republican bastions in the state. The liberal school systems there have hired diversity, equity, and inclusion instructors to overhaul curriculum and help with emotional learning, whatever that is. I want to play you a clip from Ibram Kendi. Ibram Kendi, in his book on anti-racism, how to be an anti-racist. This is a quote. The only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. I want to play you this clip. He was on television talking about the 3/5 compromise yet again in the news as the left uses it as a way to undermine the legitimacy of the Constitution. You got to understand, they're playing a long game here. The idea is to undermine people's faith in the Constitution, to try to claim that racism was structurally woven into our society through the Constitution so that they can delegitimize it. Why? Because they've got to delegitimize the Senate, because they don't like the fact that the Senate can block stuff from the House of Representatives. They want to undermine the institutions. Here's Ibram Kendi on TV talking about the 3/5 compromise.
I mean, it's a monstrous lie, and it seems to me that as it relates to history, as it relates to race, as it relates to slavery, what too many GOP state legislators and obviously senators like Mitch McConnell is they're saying that what's up is down and what's right is left, and they're completely turning on its head the truth. And leading with lies and presenting them as the truth. And so it's certainly the case that the 3/5 so-called compromise was intended to uphold and strengthen and empower slavery, which is why when you look at the first series of presidents in the United States, they were all slaveholders.
Notice what he does there. It's very, very interesting to watch this. He makes this up devoid of historic context and then accuses the other side of lying. He's accusing the other side of saying what's up is down and what's down is up. And then he goes on to do exactly that the 3/5 compromise was designed to empower and strengthen slavery. Actually, the historic record shows that the South wanted 1-to-1 representation, and it was the northern non-slaveholding states that were opposed. The compromise was the 3/5 compromise, that slaves would be treated as 3/5 of a person as opposed to one person. Why? Because the northern states did not want to give the southern states massive population advantages in the census for determining representation in the House of Representatives. They knew, however, they had to compromise on the issue. And what is left unsaid is, had they not compromised on the issue, there would be no United States of America. So the South wanted 1-to-1 representation. For every white person, a black person who was a slave would be counted as a person for purposes of the census to determine representation in the House of Representatives, districts, and the like. The northern states said no. The southern states said they would not go along with the Constitution unless they got their way. So the compromise was 3/5, which actually gave the South less than they wanted. Yes, it did empower representation in southern states with slaves. But then they also blocked the importation of slaves after 1800. So they blocked the importation of slaves after 1800, and they didn't give the South 1-to-1 representation for slaves and non-slaves for purposes of the census. So it actually reduced the power of southern states from what they wanted. But here's the larger issue that Kendi doesn't bring up, and that others who raise the issue don't bring up, and that is, are we better off with the United States than without? Because without this compromise, there would have been no United States. So the question that doesn't get raised by the historically illiterate people in the press who raise the question to those who want to obfuscate and change history, the question is, are we better off as a world with the United States or not? Because you would not have the United States under our constitutional republic without this compromise. So do you want America or not? They have been slowly twisting and revising American history with the 1619 Project, and my sense is that they believe that we would be a better off world without the United States. No one's called them on that yet. Isn't it interesting that they keep raising the revisionist history of the Three-Fifths Compromise, and there's not a damn soul on television who wants to ask them, are we better off with the United States having been formed with this compromise? Because we know from the historic record it would not have been formed but for this compromise. Why aren't members of the press asking them, do you believe we should have the United States of America or not? Because the answer they want to say is no. That's why they're revising the 1619 Project. They've made up this fabricated history of America with the 1619 Project to try to delegitimize the entire country as systemically racist when it's not. They ignore the Civil War and the bloodshed to free the slaves. They ignore the northern states restraining the South with the Three-Fifths Compromise and the importation ban on slaves. They ignore all of that history, and then they rewrite it to 1619, and no one wants to ask them the question, do you believe the world is better off with or without the United States? Why won't they ask that question? Because they're afraid they'll say yes on television and undermine their entire case with the American public.
You can follow Erick around social media.
Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but Jimmy Carter is history's greatest monster. At least according to The Simpsons, he is. I used that line one time. So there was this Simpsons cartoon at one point referred to Jimmy Carter as history's greatest monster. And because of cardigans and gas shortages and killer rabbits, and I mentioned it online one time on social media, and people clearly had not watched the Simpsons episode, and it became a thing that I was referring to him as history's greatest monster. This was back, I guess, I can't remember when, but it was, the outrage was somewhat hilarious. Nonetheless, Twitter employees are total revisionist history of Jimmy Carter. So Twitter employees have apparently not realized that Jimmy Carter had a terrible presidency. And they decided to try to drag Donald Trump Jr. because Donald Trump Jr. had made the reference that Biden isn't the next FDR, he's the next Jimmy Carter. And so the millennials at Twitter, and by the way, so Twitter's employees, just so you understand this, the social media giants employees have started, they've got an explore tab where you can explore the news, and they've started adding human curated content, and it is uniformly on the left. All of their explanations are on the left. For example, Twitter employees are the people who said that because for boycotts, that clearly fact check Stacey Abrams didn't do this because Stacey Abrams said so. Now they got this. People, this is Twitter's commentary on Jimmy Carter. People are confused. Former President Carter is a Nobel Peace Prize winner whose humanitarian record is largely respected. Hello. Jimmy Carter goes collapse of American respect abroad. I mean, it was only a year or two ago that Democrats were comparing Donald Trump to Jimmy Carter, and suddenly he's a saint. By the way, I would just like to disabuse you all of the notion that Jimmy Carter is some sort of great American humanitarian work. But Jimmy Carter's actually, the stories from the former presidents are themselves hilarious. I watch Jimmy Carter in photos of former presidents. He's always standing off by himself. All the other presidents get together and hang out because the stories are legend. And I am sworn to secrecy on these stories, or I would tell you. But let's just say you ever sit down with some of the former presidents, Democrat and Republican, by the way. So let's not play him up as Saint Jimmy, even though the media does, because they need a contrast to the Bushes and Reagan. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Really delighted to have you. I'm sorry it's Monday. We will get through it together, I hope. San Francisco decided to redirect millions of dollars in police funding to black businesses in an equity push. This is from Carly Ortiz-Lytle at the Washington Examiner. San Francisco will divert $3.75 million from its law enforcement budget to programs assisting black business owners in the city. The Office of Economic and Workforce Development will distribute funding to 17 community organizations, including the San Francisco African American Chamber of Commerce, the Center for Equity and Success, and the African American Arts and Culture Complex. The funding is aimed at preserving black cultural events and establishing incubation hubs for small businesses in historically black neighborhoods. Community organizations that receive funding will also be tasked with providing technical assistance, advice, and training to small business owners. The funding is part of our effort to undo the harm of generations of disinvestment and economic inequities, Mayor London Breed said. As we work to recover and make San Francisco a better place to live, work, and do business, we have to invest our resources in a way that lifts up and supports African-American small businesses. So there you have it. In a city where crime is out of control, people poop in the streets and do heroin everywhere, they're going to take money from the police to do this. San Francisco is going to be San Francisco. And, you know, ironically, the biggest issue in San Francisco is affordable housing. And the NIMBYs in San Francisco, the not in my backyard people, refuse to allow reasonable efforts to build affordable housing. And they're going to do this. It is very interesting to me that for all of the claims of racism in this country, the left's new approach is racism. For all the claims of discrimination, the left's approach now is discrimination. So on college campuses, you're seeing the rise of segregated housing. You were seeing the rise of programs. What was it in California? They had a blacks only vaccine pool. That if you were white, you need not a tip to get your vaccine from certain areas. We're seeing the investment in programs that take money away from white communities, black communities, which that in and of itself is not a problem if the white community is fully sufficient and the black community is not. But the fact that they're saying whites can't apply for this pool of money is discriminatory. I imagine at some point the Supreme Court's going to have to step in. And it'll be interesting to see the progressives on the Supreme Court. How does Sonia Sotomayor rule? Does she say that discrimination is fine? Reverse discrimination is fine? It'll be interesting to see how that shapes up. The Republicans in Washington are falling back into old patterns of practice. One of the reasons, there are many multifaceted reasons why Donald Trump came on the scene and essentially burned down the Republican Party as it was and remade it in his image. One of the reasons, guys like me who in 2016 didn't support the president but were sympathetic to those who did, was because the Republican Party itself had repeatedly made promises and betrayed its voters. How many Republicans in Congress told you all you got to do is give us the House and the Senate and we'll defund Obamacare? The moment Republicans gave them the House and the Senate, they said, well, we need the White House too. Well, then they got the White House and Obamacare is still the law of the land. Time and time again, Republicans in Congress make promises and break promises. Republicans in Congress say one thing, they do another. Republicans in Congress inevitably talk a conservative game, but in reality, they tend to not be that conservative. Kevin McCarthy is the leader of the Republicans in the House of Representatives. And Kevin McCarthy has now thrown his weight behind Elise Stefanik as the replacement for Liz Cheney. This is not about Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney is going to go. Liz Cheney has lost the vote. She's going to force the vote. She's going to leave. Liz Cheney will not be the number 3 in leadership after Wednesday when that vote happens. There are enough Republicans who are tired of Liz Cheney. And by the way, the reasons for being tired of Liz Cheney are not just her insistence that Republicans acknowledge the election wasn't stolen or denounce January 6th. Liz Cheney has also taken shots at a number of conservative members of the House conference. They feel like she stabbed them in the back at a moment they needed it, and this is problematic. So Liz Cheney is going to go. But Kevin McCarthy has now come out for Elise Stefanik, who's now saying, well, she's only going to do it the rest of this year. Don't worry. Trust her. She'll give up power. She wants the chairmanship of the Education Committee. Elise Stefanik is a very nice person. Elise Stefanik is very nice. She is a kind person. She is liked by many of her colleagues. She's also to the left of Liz Cheney on policy. Liz Cheney was a more reliable vote for Donald Trump's agenda than Elise Stefanik was. Yeah, let me say that to you again, because you wouldn't know that from the conversations people are having right now. Liz Cheney more regularly voted for Donald Trump's agenda than Elise Stefanik. You would not know that from the conversations people are having. And it appears it's a done deal. Donald Trump and Kevin McCarthy are rallying to Elise Stefanik. The question here is not, should Liz Cheney be replaced? She's going to be replaced. The question is who to replace her with. And this gets us back to the issue of Donald Trump, where the Republican leaders in Congress continually betrayed their conservative voters by putting in position of power progressives or people who were more moderate or liberal than the base was, who would then do things the base didn't want, like amnesty. Elise Stefanik not only voted against funding the border wall, she voted to rescind funding the border wall. She voted 6 times for government budgets without funding for the border wall, and she supported amnesty. She consistently supported weak immigration policies, liberal immigration policies. And now you're going to put her in charge of messaging for the House Republican Conference? She's just suddenly going to have a change of heart? She voted against President Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. She opposed President Trump's lawsuit against Obamacare. She voted to override President Trump's ban on transgender troops. She voted for the Equality Act that literally punishes Christian faith-based organizations if they don't break their biblical sexual ethic vows. She voted for the Climate Action Now Act, which was the precursor to the Green New Deal and would have forced us back into the Paris Climate Accord. She voted to ban drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. She even voted with Democrats against a Republican measure opposing D.C.'s abortion law. She sided with the pro-abortion agenda. She's a very nice person. She's far more liberal than Liz Cheney on these issues. She's a New York congresswoman. You know, I just don't know that it is wise for the Republican Party to go down the road of replacing Liz Cheney with someone who is less conservative than her in terms of messaging. There was a time Elise Stefanik would not even mention Donald Trump. She would not use his name. And she and Cheney agreed about January 6th. This is just weird to me. And again, Stefanik should we follow each other on Instagram? She's a fine person. She's just on her positions to the left of Cheney and to the left of where the base actually is, on the border, on culture issues, on social issues, on climate issues. She's to the left, and we're going to put her in charge of messaging. Surely we can find someone more aligned with Donald Trump and the base than Elise Stefanik to replace Liz Cheney. It's mind-boggling to me Kevin McCarthy would rush in. Now, I have a suspicion. that McCarthy believes he needs Stefanik in a leadership position, so hopefully the New York legislature will not redistrict her out of Congress. The New York legislature, New York has lost a seat in the census. They lost a seat because Andrew Cuomo killed all the senior citizens. They are having a COVID repercussion in their census dealing. Had they had 89 seniors live, Cuomo, they would not have lost a seat, but Cuomo killed off enough seniors with his policies on COVID that they're going to lose a seat in Congress. The Democrats control the House and the Senate and the governor's mansion in New York. They will leverage their power to redraw lines, and there's already talk about them wiping out the Republican members of the New York delegation in Congress. Lee Zeldin is already leaving to run against Andrew Cuomo for governor. Probably not going to do it. Stefanik is still going to be there. And there's a rumor that one of the things Kevin McCarthy is interested in and concerned about is keeping Stefanik safe in the redistricting battles, that if he gets her into leadership, he'll protect her from those. And if that's it, okay. I guess that's fine. She says she's only going to be there this term. Next term, she wants the chairmanship of the Education Committee. But I'm just not sure it's worth it. I'm just not sure it's worth it. I think when you have someone, by the way, this Republican conference leader position tends to be a dead end to a career anyway, so they may be doing Liz Cheney a favor by getting her out of it. The person who's Republican conference leader tends to go no further. So by bumping her out and making her a martyr for the cause, they're actually helping her. By putting Stefanik in, they're actually maybe helping her with redistricting than stopping her rise. People were mumbling about her maybe being a future speaker. I don't think that's going to be it. First of all, it annoys me, the whole idea that, well, we got a woman, we got to replace her with a woman. We can't have all men in charge. That just seems dumb to me. That seems like you're playing into left-wing messaging. But also the fact is we're replacing Cheney with someone who actually is to the left of her on a host of issues. Cheney having voted with Donald Trump more times than Stefanik on his agenda. The whole thing just seems bizarre to me. I think conservatives have the right to put up someone, and I think they should put up someone who's actually conservative. I think it would be good for us to see conservatives mount a challenge and say, no, we're not going with a squish. Why are we going with a squishy, moderate Republican for a position that's supposed to unite us all when we're all united to the right of this person? The Republican Party got to Donald Trump because the Republican Party leadership continually told the base one thing and did a different thing. And the thing they did was always more moderate than what they told the base. They always lied to the base, said they were conservative, said they would fight, and they always surrendered. Maybe Stefanik will be a fighter. But I think McCarthy is playing things too cute by half. He is desperate to become the next Speaker of the House, and he knows, given redistricting, the odds are he can be Speaker of the House, and so maybe he does want to protect Stefanik. But the idea that the New York legislature is going to protect her in redistricting so that Kevin McCarthy can be Speaker seems absurd to me on its face. But this is where we are with the brilliance of Republican leadership in the House.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick
Hello and welcome back. It is Erick Erickson here. This hour of the program is sponsored by First Liberty Building and Loan. They are in Noonan, Georgia, but it doesn't matter where they are. If you're nationwide in the United States, they can help you. Help your business grow, get you access to capital. If you're looking for a loan, 6 figures and higher for your business, they can help you. Go to firstlibertyga.com. The website is firstlibertyga.com. Spend 5 minutes with them. See if they're a good fit. They've been doing this since 1993, helping small businesses become big businesses. That's firstlibertyga.com. Thanks to them for their sponsorship. CNN continues to be obsessed with Tucker Carlson. Here's Brian Stelter.
When I've tuned in lately, I've heard complaints about triple masking, 3 masks, even though that's not a real thing. I've heard claims that we are well past herd immunity, even though most experts say the opposite. On Fox, I've heard people are being forced to take the vaccine, which is clearly false. And worst of all, I've heard Tucker Carlson repeatedly say that many Americans are dying after getting the shot. And he says it with the implication that the shots are to blame with no evidence at all. He's scaring his audience so recklessly that even some of his own colleagues called him out for it on Twitter. Carlson acts like he knows some secret truth that's been covered up by some shadowy enterprise. You know what? Maybe he should be writing some junk movie of the week for Netflix or Tubi. Maybe he should go write horror novels for a living, because he's clearly not responsible enough to have a show that purports to pretends to be news.
Okay. Brian Stelter has a low-rated weekend show on CNN, and Tucker Carlson has the highest-rated show on cable. Not just in cable news. Tucker Carlson has the most-watched show in cable. And Stelter, who has a weekend show where the ratings go up when he's on vacation, wants to lecture Fox and Tucker Carlson on how to do their job. What's going on here, and by the way, Jim Acosta got into it as well, calling it Foxitis, that Foxitis is the disease of watching Fox or some such. What they're really going for here is they got to have a big bad. Donald Trump is gone. He's off social media. He's got his new website up, but his social media mentions have fallen something like 90%. And